Hello, everyone. I'm happy to announce our first GeoChat speaker, Aman Gupte, a geoscientist that works at ExxonMobil. So first, we'll do the background. When did you first get interested in geoscience?
That was be in, I guess, early undergrad. I was actually a petroleum engineer, and I took a Rocks for Jocks class that I think all petroleum engineers have to take. And honestly, it was my professor that really convinced me to switch majors in a way, and that was simply because of his description of what a geologist is, and it sounded more like what I was interested in as opposed to sort of the numerical world of engineering. So there's a lot of storytelling in geology. There's a lot of field work. So all of that sounded really exciting.
What university degrees have you earned, and was your journey through university continuous, or did you take a break?
Yeah. So in undergrad, a Bachelor of Science in Geology from UTSA, that was 2019. And then I did take a break for about 2 years, about a year and a half. And that's when I sort of got my first job in the industry. I was a rock analysis specialist with Schlumberger, essentially just a lab monkey that's running different tests on cores of different type of rock samples from different operators around the world. So I got sort of the inside look in how that data is created and what sort of data analysis is done in the background that then the companies use to do their work. So that was a really I would say key point in my career to get that job and learn from that role. And then after that, I started grad school at Rice University, sort of a non-traditional master's route. So this program is called the Professional Science Master's Program. It's not a thesis-based program, but it's a program that mixes a little bit of geoscience and a little bit of management, a little bit of business. And it's really to prepare geoscientists to be able to answer business related questions, which more and more is becoming really big in sort of oil and gas, where geoscientists are often asked to uh, answer for why they are running certain technical analyses. And so it's really important to be able to tell your boss or tell the manager, hey, like this is important because this answers this business question. So those were my two degrees, and that was 2022 is when I graduated from Rice.
Okay, so why and how did you choose your career path, and what steps led you to where you are now in your career?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I don't have a good answer for. I think so. I've always been interested in oil and gas. My family's been in the oil and gas business for a while, so that was always in my head. Uh, but I think the creativity that geoscience allows, as opposed to engineering, which again is what my first career choice was, is what really drew me to geology and specifically to oil and gas geology. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, some of the really key things in what I did was some undergraduate research with through the GeoPats program that was really helpful. I worked with Dr. Godet during that time, as well as my first role in the industry with Schlumberger doing rock analysis. I think that was really important. So I've always done work that has built skills specific to oil and gas in oil and gas geology, and I think that was really important.
So, what do you view as the most important component in your background that has facilitated your career trajectory? For
Yeah, that's a good
example,
question, and I would say it's a twofold answer for me. One is building the right technical skills. So again, my role as a core analysis specialist with Schlumberger, where I got the inside look on how how that data is generated, how the tests are run. So I know the sort of the weaknesses of the tests and how they can be applied. But as well, my sort of my business background at Rice, where I learned what are some of the important questions to ask for an oil and gas business, besides just the technical questions. So I would say having a sort of a holistic approach was really important for me to get to where I am today.
do you view being licensed as a geoscientist as critical for securing a similar job to yours?
I would say that in oil and gas, it doesn't hurt, but I was in a professional geologist, and I know several that were not. So, in fact, most of the geoscientists at ExxonMobil are not PGs. So, I would say it doesn't hurt, but it wouldn't set you apart, not necessarily.
So now we're on the day in the life section.
Sure.
So, what areas within geoscience do you use in your current job?
My current job, I'm doing a lot of seismic analysis, a lot of mapping surfaces. Um, that's sort of my world right now, is a lot of seismic. And in the past, when I used to work for the unconventional arm of ExxonMobil, a lot of well log analysis, a lot of picking tops, doing sort of regional correlations, things like that. Specifically, those are the skills that I'm applying right now.
What is your specialization if you have one?
Because I didn't do a thesis based master's, I wouldn't say that I have a particular specialization, but a lot of my work in the past has been related to petrophysics. So I would say that that's an area that I would feel most comfortable in, but not necessarily a specialization.
What kind of activities fill up your workday, and how have these activities in your workday evolved over time?
Yeah. So, I mean, besides a lot of meetings, it's a lot of, yeah, just working in Petrel to interpret seismic. A lot of conversations with senior geologists about what is the best way to display data. And that's one skill that I've been trying to sort of build, is there's multiple ways to show something, but what's the best way to do it in order to get your message across, which also can be used for, devious reasons as well. But what is the best way to display data in order to tell the story in the most concise manner, in the best way possible? So a lot of that, and some of looking at wells again. So looking at things like well log interpretations, a lot of running my own interpretive logs. So that's sort of the other half of my day, if you will.
Um, what are some geoscience related tools that you use in your work?
So yeah, besides Petrel, I think some of the important tools would be Petrel, Kingdom, and Petra. Although Petra is slowly being phased out of the industry, there's at least the bigger oil companies are still hanging on to Petra. So that's been really that was really key to learn. That was sort of my first assignment, was in Petra. So uh, besides those geoscience sort of specific tools, I would say if you are really good at Excel, and if you're really good at Illustrator, or some kind of sort of tool that where you're drawing and we're displaying data, I would say those are really key tools as well.
What kind of analyses do you perform in your work?
Um, so in, I would say, geologically, it would be like running well logs. So I don't know, calculating TOC, things like that. But more generally, a lot of data science work. So a lot of in petrophysics, as you may know, there's a lot of statistics involved. So I would say uh, becoming familiar with those concepts is really important. And in generally in oil and gas, for a geoscientist to be able to speak in probability is a really useful skill. So that's those are some of the things that I apply on a regular basis as well.
What new skills have you learned in your career since completing your degree?
What new skills? I think almost everything I've learned seems pretty brand new. Um, there's been a lot of reinforcement of the basic concepts. So, um, well log analysis, picking surfaces on seismic. What are some ways that you can improve that? That's been very new to me. What are some things that could be wrong with your data, and how to ask those questions and how to decipher that sort of by yourself before you move on with the interpretive part? That's been an important skill to learn. And what else? Let's see. Yeah, I would say geoscience communication or science communication has been really big as well. Being able to talk to people within the team that are of different disciplines, or managers that have no technical background, it's been really key to learn how to summarize that, your findings, and again, finding the right displays, finding the right way to show your data. That's been a really important skill that I'm developing, and I think especially in oil and gas, that will certainly make you. Um, it'll help you be sort of set apart from your colleagues, is how well you communicate your data, because geoscientists love, and myself too, just to get in the weeds and get really technical. But if you can't show one, what it is you're doing, and two, why it's important to the business, um, it's really of no benefit to the company.
What other STEM disciplines are applied in your work, such as physics, chemistry, computer science?
Um, I would say physics is really big, especially in the world where you're working with a lot of seismic data. You have to understand how the geophysicists have conditioned the data, how the geophysicists have essentially manipulated the data to show you the best image possible, but also things like when you're interpreting, what is how does a channel evolve over time, or um, how do gravity flows move, things like that. So that's also rooted in physics as well. That's been really big for me as of recent. In the past, I have used a lot of geochemistry as well, especially geochemistry data from different test results like rock eval pyrolysis, things like that. So that's been really big in building the story. I'll give you a quick example. We were trying to build a story in southern Oklahoma of where are our phase boundaries in the basin. So where does the oil stop? Where does the gas begin? Things like that in the entire basin. So the geochemistry work was really important in trying to figure out where those phase boundaries are. And the overarching question was, the company wants to go after oil. So where are the areas we don't want to drill based on this phase map? So I think that was really key. And what else? Let's see. Computer science. Me personally, I have not had to do a lot of sort of hardcore computer science work yet. But I know that that's a skill that's very important. I know a lot of reservoir engineers as well as petrophysicists that use a lot of computer science to crunch a lot of sort of large data sets down into uh, small interpretable chunks for the geoscientists. So that's a skill that's, I think, useful to have. And depending on your role, you may apply a lot or may not apply at all, but it's good to know.
What courses or skills do you recommend to students wanting to work in your area of geoscience?
It's funny. I was thinking about that question and went back to what I've been doing at work. A lot of it has not changed in terms of be really solid in your foundation. So I know a lot of senior geoscientists that can still uh, sort of just rattle off different chemical formulas or mineral formulas. And I have very quickly forgotten those as soon as I left mineralogy. So you have to, it keeps coming back. You have to know your basics. Set strat is another one. You have to understand just how sediments move and change over time. So being really solid in your basics is always going to help you, and you will always keep coming back to the basics because ultimately somebody will ask you, well, how does this work? And you have to come back to a chapter from a book or something. But hey, this is the specific phenomenon that I'm talking about, or this is the specific phenomenon that we see here. This is how we know the literature has proved it to evolve. So this is how it is. This is what we're looking at here. So I would say the basics is really good to strap in. The other thing would be, is if you're interested in oil and gas, is understanding a little bit of accounting, a little bit of finance, being able to understand where your company wants to put most of the money, where they want to take risks, how big of a risks, and on your end, as a geoscientist, what questions do you need to answer to be able to help your managers make the best decision? So if I say, well, I want to drill here, it's got 100 million barrels, but only a 15% chance of success. Is that worth the $100 million that the company could put elsewhere? So you have to have that sort of context in mind of, well, the budget is only this much. Um, so long story short, being able to understand, what makes the business work, what are some of the business challenges, and how can you try to solve them on the technical end. So I would say finance is really big. Uh, as well, science communication or communication in general is really big as well as a geoscientist. Again, as I mentioned, it's really easy for technical people to get down in the weeds and become sort of, I don't know, just too tangled up in terms of telling their small technical portion, but really lose the entire sort of where their technical portion fits in the big picture. So I think communicating what you're working on, what the results are in a very simple and concise manner to the specific target audience, I think that's really important. If I'm speaking to a reservoir engineer, I speak to him or him or her differently than I would speak to a manager or a lawyer for that matter, or a landman. So science communication would be something that is one of those skills that wouldn't hurt to have. It certainly can set you apart, especially in an interview or in a setting where you're sort of competing with other applicants, things like that.
Okay, thank you. That is actually the end of the questions. So we will open it up to anybody else that has any questions, but I just want to touch on something real quick.
Sure.
I love that you just mentioned the accounting thing because I'm a geology major and my boyfriend is actually an accounting major, and he
Yeah.
always talks about how different our degrees are, but maybe you just kind of proved that there's a little bit of a connection there.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let's see if I think of an example. So this is not specifically accounting related, but in my interview for ExxonMobil, one of the things that they make early career applicants do is give us quick presentation on what they've worked on in the past. So a lot of the presentations in my sort of hiring day were very technical. I think what set me apart was at the end of my presentation, I included a little bit of what I had learned in school, which was just to make a cash flow projection of how good a well might do, right? And immediately I could tell that that was something that the geoscientists in the room that had worked for ExxonMobil for a while, they could tell that maybe I am able to answer or get at the important questions more quickly than other people are. And I would also kind of say that a big reason why I was hired at ExxonMobil was the big shift in the industry, specifically in the company. I would say is that they want geoscientists now to have a lot of business acumen. You don't want geoscientists to spend a lot of their time, the company's time, working on answering questions that are not important to the business. So if you understand the bigger business context, you are able to spend your time wisely, if you will, to answer those specific, very important questions only. And that goes back to, again, what are the company's business goals, financial goals, and how can you do you understand them, one, and then if you understand them, how can you relay that back to your day-to-day role? So yeah, I think it's really good if you can read a cash flow statement and if you can understand what's going on with the company. Those are always really helpful. You might learn things about your own company that you didn't know.
That's cool. It's something I never really thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, oil and gas companies hire geologists to find oil, but ultimately it is a business, and they won't let you just do different science experiments on a daily basis with unlimited money. You have to give them some returns, and those are the finding oil and finding it successfully multiple times. That's your goal.
That makes sense. Does anybody in here have any questions?
Yes, I had a quick question. I wanted to know what challenges geologists face when conducting fieldwork.
I may not be the right person to ask because unfortunately unfortunately I haven't done a lot of field work. I would say from my experience, if you're working for a big company, big companies do not usually like to send a lot of people out regularly, especially at this time, sort of after COVID, where just conducting business in oil and gas companies is becoming really difficult. And what I mean by that is there's just not a lot of money to be wasted on things that are not core business. So finding the time and money and the right opportunity to conduct field work in the job has become really difficult. In fact, I think in the past, since I've been with the ExxonMobil, which is almost 2 years now, I have heard of only one field trip for early career folks that wasn't sort of necessary to core business. Some other challenges that I've heard about is finding the right access. So talking to landowners or talking to people that can help you get to where you want to go. So a lot of the outcrops are not available to be accessed on the public land, things like that. So that could be an issue that has to be sorted out. Who sorts that out? I have no idea. I can't help you with that, unfortunately. But I think Dr. Godet would be a good person to ask. I'm sure Dr. Haschenberger as well. These guys have conducted a lot of field work.
Alrighty, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello, I do have a question.
Sure.
Yes, I think I heard you that you said that you were in Africa.
No, I'm the team that I work on at work works in West Africa or
Oh,
works on West Africa assets. So we work on it from here.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask another question. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I hear that you maybe you've done several in geology, several jobs, right? That you've had
Sure.
your career. What is the most impactful job that you have encountered so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I would go back to the job that I had with Schlumberger as the rock analysis specialist role, simply because you got to see different types of rocks from around the world, and you got to run experiments on them. And these are experiments that, now that I am on the flip side, this is the data that I require to do some of the analysis that I do. So being able to run those experiments, those machines, understanding what could go wrong, understanding where some inconsistencies may lie, or just knowing, hey, which is the right test to run? What does this test mean for my data or for my rocks? Things like that. I would say that role has directly impacted in the form of me getting my internship. That role was built on top of the work that I had to do over there, and then as well at ExxonMobil, getting that role, being in the lab, running those tests, really sets you apart. I think it's similar to a mudlogging job or a well site geologist job, where you're out there on the rig, you understand the operations, you understand what's going on, and on top of that, you are directly interacting with the rocks, the cuttings that are coming to the surface. So you're understanding what's going on the subsurface. I think any direct experience like that is really valuable.
Yes, thank you. This is the first time that I take geology.
Mm-hmm.
And, recently we were studying rocks, and I just play around saying, like, you tend to kick one out the side or whatever. And now that we've been studying that, it's like I take great value in it.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I've always been a rock collector also, but just of certain ones, not just here we're dissecting certain rocks and
Sure.
learning about it, and it's very interesting. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course, you're welcome.
So maybe I can ask a follow-up question about this first job that's been so pivotal in you.
Mm-hmm.
How did you actually get that job?
I happened to luck upon it. Honestly, it wasn't something that role was not something that I had learned about previously. It was just something that, as I was looking for jobs, I happened to find. In fact, so when I left UTSA, this was right after I graduated in August. I graduated in May. This was in August that I got this job. Over the summer there, I was just looking for oil and gas related jobs that didn't require a master's degree. So, as you all may know, one of the requirements to have a sort of an oil and gas geologist job is to have a master's degree. So at that point in my career, when I didn't have a master's degree, it was really important for me to find a way to stay connected to the industry without sort of moving too far away in a realm where my experience won't be directly related to oil and gas, what I ultimately wanted to do. So yeah, I was just looking for jobs in the oil and gas industry that didn't require a master's degree, and that was one that I found.
Go ahead.
Not saying hi, I'm raising my hand. Okay. I'm going to ask my question first. So you mentioned that when you were at Rice, you did a master degree, non-TIS option, right? So I was wondering if you would have done a degree with a thesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would have things been different? Sorry, that's very poorly worded here.
No, that makes sense.
And also if have you ever thought about what kind of thesis research, the research a topic for your thesis?
Yeah, that's a good question. What things that have been different? I don't know. Um, Especially because at these big companies, people are still being hired with a regular thesis background. In fact, I think I'll give you a specific example. At the company that I interned at Ovintiv, I was the first one and probably the last professional science master's student that they allowed to intern, because that company specifically wants a sort of academic, technical folks. So they want people that have done research, that have experience with research. I don't know why that is. I think they're a little bit, what's the word? They want their technical folks to have a sort of a credential in the work that they do and where they come from. So they want a sort of a master's student that has experience doing research. But at ExxonMobil, it's totally different. You know, they have a lot of they have people with decades of experience in, you know, specific scientific and technical things. Now they want their technical people to be a little bit more generalist, as well as a little bit more or have a little bit more business acumen. So it's not just about who's got this great knowledge in hydrocarbon systems. It's about, hey, do you understand hydrocarbon systems plus a few other things? Plus, do you know what the important question is to answer in this business case? So I think at this point, if you're applying for a job at a bigger company, I think they are more open to geoscientists that are more generalist and have more of a business acumen, or, you know, on the flip side, more of a computer science background as well. I would say in smaller companies, they still want sort of a traditional scientist.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That absolutely makes sense. And I guess maybe a follow-up question. So you graduate with your bachelor degree from UTSA, and then you went to Rice. How was the transition from between those two campuses that I believe are a bit different?
Dr. Godet, it was crazy because the first semester was all online. It was still sort of the remnants of COVID.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
it was a weird experience. One of my first classes in grad school that was in person was just like 3 people in person and the professor. So it was just, along with COVID, it was just a weird time to be, you know, like a large gathering place, like a college campus. But the transition was really great after sort of the things, some of the COVID mandates winded down. I would recommend Rice to anybody that you know wants to go. It's a beautiful campus, as well as the history and the credibility allows for specific recruitment opportunities. There are companies that come to Rice and Rice only. You know, there's companies that don't go to U of H or some of the other public schools. So it was a very fun sort of change. It's a cool place to just walk around. It's such a historic, you know, campus. So I would say that the transition in terms of the faculties and the specific geoscience department, I would say the attention to detail was similar to UTSA's. I mean, you guys did a great job with this different curriculum as well as the program, and it's the same way at Rice. The professors really care a lot about you know, staying in touch with the industry and teaching the right courses, both on the academic side and the non-academic side, but as well as programs outside of just courses and regular classes.
Yeah, thank you.
If there are no more questions, I think this will conclude our GeoChat.
I have one more.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, thinking back as an undergrad, what would have been some advice you would have appreciated at the time that you didn't get for whatever reason? Or put it another way, if you have any advice for, you know, these students here today, you know, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a good question. Advice for the students, I would say, yeah, if you like geology and also want to work in oil and gas, don't just be a scientist. You have to think of your role as a business person first, because you're not working for a research association. You're working for a business. So that would be main advice. Another one would be work on how can you communicate, especially technical things, better to a layman audience. I think those would be two really big uh, things that I wish that I had worked on more while I was an undergrad. As far as some advice that I wish that I would have gotten earlier, that's a tough one. I guess maybe because I'm lucky, I can say this, but it's okay to be a generalist. You don't have to have a deep background in a specific subsection or subdiscipline of geology. And at that point, when I was an undergrad, one of my biggest sort of points of stress were, what am I going to do for grad school? I'm not specifically interested in any subset of geoscience. I really enjoyed the research that I did with Dr. Gaudet, and that was cool. But thinking about, man, how deep do I want to get into any specific topic? I couldn't think of one. And I was really lucky to find the professional science master's program where, they would teach me the business side, and I also wouldn't have to do any research, but I would still learn and build that knowledge in the geosciences as well. So yeah, I would say what that would be one of the pieces of advice that I would give would be, it's okay to be a generalist. Certainly know what your subdisciplines are working on. Have that, like I mentioned earlier, have the basics under your belt, understand the basics, but you don't have to be a PhD in a particular skill or a particular subdiscipline. At least to be an oil and gas geologist, that's what I'll say. I don't know about the other worlds.
I think that's great because a lot of my classmates actually, specifically in undergrad, we would discuss like what we were interested in, and a lot of them, they didn't know what they wanted to do. They just knew they wanted to study geology, but they didn't really know what specifically they wanted to do.
In fact, you ask me now still if I wanted to go back and do research, I still wouldn't know what I would study. So all of it is really cool, but all of it can get too in the weeds for me personally.
Okay. Anybody have any last questions? No? Okay. Okay. Well, then I just want to thank you for taking the time to come do this GeoChat with us. It was great.